UN Security Council had a meeting yesterday, and Ray McGovern spoke to it. He is a former member of the CIA, and he testified in support of Seymour Hersh's article on the United States bombing Nord Stream pipeline. If it is proven that the United States bombed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, as has been asserted by Seymour Hersh and his article, will you call for the United States to acknowledge and admit that that was an act of war against Germany and Russia? And I'm asking this because this may be the only way to prevent the rest of us from being killed in a thermonuclear war. And I don't want to be fried. Don't you think the media should be reporting on whether or not this is true? And don't you think you should be inquiring into whether or not this is true?
Well, thank you for the question. One, I've got no information to suggest that the United States was involved in bombing the Nord Stream pipeline.
Because you weren't briefed on it.
Sir, you got your chance to ask a question. So you give me an opportunity to respond.
You weren't given information because he explicitly says you weren't briefed on it. Right. Shouldn't you inquire?
So here's what I'll say about, I think, President Biden's leadership generally as it relates to the Ukraine and Russia.
We committed an act of war. What are you doing to respond to that? We have to hold Biden accountable. So listen, you're from Brooklyn, right? You know when to call bullshit when you see it. So do I. This is bullshit right now. And I see what's happening right now. That does not silence me. You can hear me right now. I want you to say something about the bombing, because we're all going to die from a nuclear war right now unless you stop it and you at least put and inquire into whether or not it's true. This war in Ukraine is going to leave us all dead. So what are you going to do? Because you need to inquire. I'm a New Yorker too.
Here's what I'll say.
Say it.
We're going to continue to stand with the Ukrainian people.
That's fucking bullshit. Do not do that. You will end us all dead.
In this war against Vladimir Putin.
We need peace. We need talks.
Because
why are you sabotaging talks? Do not put your hands on me. We need peace talks. I am not going to take this. We need peace talks. You are leaving. Listen.
Democracy.
Did you even read the allegations?
And autocracy. It's a battle between
How about a...
Hey guys, study after study shows that if you want strong bones and muscles, healthy hair, skin, teeth, and nails, you need the 5 types of collagen in your diet. I get mine from BioTrust. I've got a link in the description with a massive discount, and it'll tell you all about it.
I just have a couple of questions. One, Seymour Hersh has published this expose that the United States was responsible for the destruction of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. And yet he's an incredibly decorated journalist. He's been involved in exposing the My Lai massacre in the 1960s. He exposed the fact that the CIA was actually spying on our own citizens. And he exposed what was going on in Abu Ghraib in 2002. Now, you're talking all of this stuff about Ukraine, yet you're not mentioning that we had planned this attack on the pipelines in advance, much before the invasion. And this is an act of terrorism against Germany and against Russia. We're violating the sovereignty of one nation, and yet here we are talking about, the Russians are the bad guys. And what about the sanctions that we put on Syria? There was this horrific earthquake that hit Syria, that hit Turkey, and because of the sanctions, the Caesar sanctions which we put there, the required aid is not going to them because of our government sanctions and because we're occupying the northwest of that nation right now. So how is it that you can lie to all of us and say we're standing for democracy against this aggressor Russia when we're just as bad? We're terrorizing people all across the world, and we've destroyed a major piece of infrastructure.
I'm running the show, not you.
No. I want her to answer the question. Can you call for an international investigation into this Nord Stream sabotage? Can you acknowledge the fact that we've been terrorizing nations across the world, and we do not stand for democracy anymore? I want her to answer that.
We do stand for democracy. You want
No.
Dan Applebaum to answer?
I want an answer from Mr. Applebaum. And also, I would like you to, wait, one more thing.
No.
Can you talk about why your husband, Mr. Sikorsky, why he put on Twitter, "Thank you, USA," after we bombed the Nord Stream pipelines? Why did your husband say that?
It was a joke.
It was a joke? Why did he delete it right after then?
Because the joke was misunderstood.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Well, I think he has a good point because Mrs. Applebaum admitted there's a danger of nuclear war, and what I heard today was not compelling in the slightest. There's no solution. You admit that we're on the verge of nuclear war. You said it yourself that there's a risk of this. What we're looking at is an escalation. If you're expressing the desire to take Crimea, that can lead to thermonuclear war. What is your peace plan? The Pope has a peace offering for negotiations. There was an effort to make negotiations, which Prime Minister Bennett of Israel said was canceled by the West, by the United States, by the UK.
Excuse me.
Where will we get peace?
Excuse me, what's your name?
What is the intention?
What's your
I work
name?
with Helga Zepp-LaRouche. I'm Daniel
What's your
Burke with the
name?
Schiller Institute. And I'm here to say that this is ridiculous. I mean, you're pathetic. The Global South is not going along with this imperial policy. They're not. They're not going to go along with the idea of sanctions to destroy the world. All right, look at Syria, honestly. 90% of the population is in extreme poverty. Do people here know that? And she says we're the democracy.
Excuse me, I think the
She says the issue, I want a response too. She says the issue is democracy.
Please raise your hand. If you don't want to hear
She said the issue is democracy versus autocracy. She said that's the issue. How can we claim that the U.S. is a moral power? We have committed mass genocide. We destroyed Iraq. We destroyed Libya. We destroyed Syria. And we're sanctioning the world. And you're telling me we're the leaders of the moral free world? I think that you're pathetic. The situation is out of your control. You admit that there is a break in the establishment. Graham Allison is a leading member of the establishment, and you haven't answered a single one of his protests. You have not successfully isolated Russia. You have not successfully destroyed their economy. They're doing great in their economy. You have not gotten India, Brazil, China to go along with you. NATO is doomed. It's pathetic.
Well, you're right. It's an unprecedented act in American history. And the people of the United States have a right to know if their government blew up the pipeline. And if you look at the details in Seymour Hersh's investigative piece, there was a plan to destroy the pipeline before the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and incriminating statements were made by President Biden, Victoria Nuland, National Security Advisor Sullivan, prior to the pipeline being blown up. And when you think about it, Sullivan's key here because he helped to organize it, then he tried to blame Russia, and what it was really all about is knocking Russia out of the European natural gas market. And one thing I want you to think about, Tucker, this pipeline attack occurred off Bornholm Island, which is part of Denmark. Denmark signed the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court. And Denmark has to investigate this incident, or the ICC will. And the United States Congress has an obligation to investigate, and because if they don't, this is also something could go to the ICC even if America doesn't recognize the ICC. So no one has heard the end of it.
I don't know why when the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline that we're all silent about it. Why are we silent about it?
What's your proof?
Pardon me?
What is your proof?
That President Biden said on February 7th of this year that if Russia invades, the pipeline is finished. And the reporter looked incredulously, said, Mr. President, that is Russian, German infrastructure. And President Biden says, don't worry, we have our ways. And the U.S. does have its ways. It controls that territory. It monitors that territory. After the pipeline was blown up, our Secretary of State said, and I'm quoting, this is a tremendous opportunity to wean Europe from Russian energy. What a weird statement if you're worried about international piracy of global infrastructure. You would say it's a terrible crime, it's a threat to world peace. You would not call it a tremendous opportunity to wean Europe from Russian energy. This was part of American foreign policy. Now, the Swedes went in to clean up the debris. And what did the Swedes say? We cannot share our findings with Germany because of national security. Can you figure that one out? I can. But it's incredible. How could Sweden not share its findings with Germany and Denmark? But their job was to clean up the debris so that nobody else could investigate either. And they've done that. Now, the press, in this most remarkable act of vandalism on a key piece of international infrastructure, has not said a word in 8 weeks.
Should America send F-16s?
It's not an issue that I've been heavily involved in, but I support what the president is doing. I think what Putin did was outrageous, not only for the people of the Ukraine and all the destruction, not only for the thousands and tens of thousands of Russian soldiers who have been dying. We need a world now, if we're going to combat climate change, if we're going to combat future pandemics, we need a world to come together. And Putin has radically disrupted that, and that is a real tragedy. But I think at the end of the day, the United States, NATO cannot sit back and allow Putin's aggression to go unresponded to.